Please hold for the tone to join your conference.
PerformancePoint Services in Excel 2010, presented by Tom, Marek, and Bill Savitz. My name is Marek Mead, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for Neudesic and the moderator for today's webcast. This webcast is presented by Tom Marek, Neudesic's General Manager of Business Intelligence, and Bill Savitz, the Director of Public Sector. We are very excited to have them present for us this morning. If you're all logged on, you should be able to see the title slides that states Neudesic Business Intelligence. There was a brief intro earlier regarding features of the live meeting. To briefly recap, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the session by typing them in. To ask a question, click on the Q&A verbiage located in the toolbar on the top left side of your screen. Type your question, then click the Ask button. Please note all questions will be held until the end. We will also be using the seating chart feature within live meetings. Changing your feedback color within this tool provides feedback to the presenter. To provide feedback, click on the feedback menu found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Select your feedback color. Your seat in the conference center will display your selected color. Lastly, this webcast is being recorded and will be available via the Neudesic website. We will email you when the link is available. If everyone is ready, please make sure your seat color is green. At this time, I'd like to turn our presentation over to Tom.
Well, hello everybody, and thanks for attending our webcast today. This webcast is really going to focus on business intelligence in the public sector, and since this is part of our public sector series. And one of the things that I'd like to cover is really the whole entire Microsoft Business Intelligence stack that they've pulled out in SQL Server, with SQL Server 2008 R2, SharePoint 2010, and then Office 2010 as well plays a big role in this, and I will get into the details of explaining all that as we go. Now, to start this whole thing off, I would really like to get some feedback from the audience to see how well-versed you are in some of the things I'll be covering, to see how deep I should go in the technical aspects, or the non-technical for that matter. So I'm going to actually hand this back to Meredith temporarily, and she's going to do some polling of questions that we would like for you to answer for us.
First question we'd like to know is, do you have SharePoint 2010 or plan to migrate to this platform soon? Have it now? Will be migrating within the next 6 months? Or not sure? Give it a couple more seconds.
Well, it looks like a lot of people will be migrating in the next 6 months. You'll be able to see some of the new features and functionality built into the PerformancePoint 2010 pieces of this as I go through this.
The second polling question is, do you currently use PerformancePoint Services? Yes with PerformancePoint 2007, yes with SharePoint 2010 and PerformancePoint Services, not yet but will be in the next 6 months, or no? All right, let's give it a couple more seconds. And it looks like a lot of you are currently not, but will be soon in the next 6 months. The next question, have you created a power pivot in Excel? Yes or no?
Well, quite a few of you have. Good to see.
All right, and the last question, give a few more seconds, looks like people are still going. All right, last question. Have you used the Power Pivot Excel report created by someone else? Yes or no? Seems like some of you have, but the majority have not. Great, thank you everyone. I'm going to give this right back to Tom.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my desktop to go through some of this and move over to an agenda screen. Give me just a sec to get set up here. So, Neudesic Business Intelligence, I'm actually the General Manager of the Business Intelligence Practice. Today's agenda, we're actually going to be covering a little bit of background about Neudesic itself. We'll also cover Neudesic's Business Intelligence Practice. We're going to cover some of the basic SharePoint 2010 features and benefits, mostly surrounding the business intelligence capabilities here. And then the SQL Server 2008 R2 features and benefits that are added in. And then lastly, the Office Excel 2010 Power Pivot. And then after that, this is a public sector series, so I really wanted to make sure I cover some of the business intelligence surrounding the public sector area in this agenda. Now, Neudesic, we are a nationwide company. We are an NSI, a National Systems Integrator, and we have offices in 14 different cities around the country. We do have various different base practices. I'm in the business intelligence SQL practice, but we've started as a custom application development company and have many .NET and Silverlight developers to take business intelligence even further if we'd like. We have a portals and collaboration team that focuses almost solely on SharePoint and Office integrations into SharePoint and a lot of the workflow tasks built into there. You also have a whole connected systems team that helps us out with real-time business intelligence and different ways to really keep all of that data flowing from system to system. We have a dynamic CRM team that focuses on the CRM 4.0 and also the 2011 versions of that CRM Dynamics package. And then lastly, we have a division that's managed services. This is our version of private cloud, and we offer our customers some availability of cloud-based services in our managed services division and data center. Our core business models are, we were really a consulting services practice from the get-go. That's where we started and came out right around the time .NET came out and slowly expanded into these other areas. One of the other areas was actually product solutions. We saw clients needed certain things over and over, and we really felt like we were building some reusable IP that we could continue to use with customer to customer. And oftentimes in the BI area, we have a series of frameworks that we have that I'll explain a little bit in the next slide. We also have that managed services area, which is really hosted services that we offer, where we'll offer cloud-based business intelligence right in the cloud, so that way a customer can link that in to their current infrastructure. And soon I'll be coming out with a BI in the cloud series as well. Now the next slide is really covering Neudesic and BI. There's massive return on investment. We have over 150 clients with numerous data warehouses, over 250,000 hours of BI services delivered. We have Neudesic BI frameworks for extremely quick delivery. And then we have leading in business intelligence talent. And we really try to bring all of our partners and vendors together to make solutions. Now, Microsoft Business Intelligence, this is the stack that I mentioned earlier that I consider the business intelligence stack that's been released by Microsoft. The first part of this stack is really the Office layer of this, which gives you a very familiar user interface for your end users. They're very familiar with the ribbons in 2007, 2010, and a lot of that is actually carried over throughout this stack. You have self-service access with Office Excel. You also have data exploration and analysis built into Excel. There's actually data mining tools built right into that to give you some predictive analytics. There's also data visualizations, and some of the charts and graphs and things like that are just really impressive with what they've come out with Power Pivot, as you'll see later in my demo. Now, a little lower in this stack is the SharePoint part of this stack, and this is really your integrated content and collaboration. You can collaborate by sharing documents. You have workflows and things like that built into this tool. You also have Office Thin Clients, which surfaces a lot of your Office documents right inside SharePoint without even having to have Office Excel 2010. You have BI search, content management, and also compositions of mashups of business connectivity services and things of the like in SharePoint 2010 as well. The last part of this is you've got your SQL Server 2008 R2 stack. In this part of the stack, you actually have a data infrastructure and BI platform. And what it does, you have a combination of not only just your relational database management system, but you also have your analysis services, your reporting services, which are really standard systems there. You also have your integration services for your extract, transform, and load of data. A couple newer things are coming out as well. There's the master data services that is also a piece of this package as well for master data management. And then there's obviously data warehousing, data mining services as well, which is that predictive analytics. Basically, this is kind of going over some of the performance point pieces that are inside of SharePoint, and I'm going to walk through the SharePoint pieces that are really BI specific. You're actually looking at a dashboard that was developed inside of PerformancePoint. What this allows you is it really increases your visibility across your organization. It allows numerous different chart types and filters that are available, and it allows you to iterate through this decision-making process. And what I mean by that is really a lot of these charts and graphs are interactive. As you can see on the screen here right in the center, they're like clicking on that pie chart and allowing them to drill down into that. There's also decomposition trees and things of such where you actually see on the far right of the screen where there's a decomposition tree drilling into that data. All of these components can be tied together by standard filters and things like that. Another area that people overlook sometimes in SharePoint is you actually have Visio Services. And this is a whole other form of BI, and this is more for an IT area in this example, but it could also be used for business flow, showing you the flow of business and where you're having bottlenecks in your business flow. And you could essentially, all the parts inside of a Visio document could be connected to real-time data underneath it. So this could essentially become your key performance indicators of your business and how you're doing in a Visio flow. Now we jump into kind of the SQL Server reporting services piece, and this is self-service reporting as Microsoft has built out Report Builder 3.0. The newest version of Report Builder 3.0 really kind of made big leaps in my opinion. You no longer have to tie to a single data model underneath all of this. You have a very familiar Microsoft interface, as I said before. At the top of this screen, you can actually see that there's a ribbon built right in that gives people that same user interface as an Office product normally would. On the right-hand side of that screen, you actually see some components there that are in a little list. That's actually report parts. Those are pieces that could be developed by a developer in Business Intelligence Development Studio or Visual Studio, and then surface through these report part libraries and allowing people to really pick and choose their own reports that they create. And it comes through with all the data sets and everything attached to it, and it allows you to go in there and filter it and change things how you want. And this kind of gives people that iGoogle type format of changing things around and making their own reports of how they want it. Now, rich visualizations, this really kind of extended out when you've got your visualizations of SSRS. Not only do you have the geospatial mapping, but you also have spark lines, data bars, and different graphing types that you could build right into this. And as you can see, you could build some pretty interesting visualizations on your data based on this screen. At this point, I'm kind of jumping into the Office end of this features and benefits. And in Office, one of the biggest new additions here is really the Power Pivot for Excel. Power Pivot for Excel has essentially you could bring in unlimited amounts of data into this. As long as you increase your RAM and things of the such, you could really push this to its limits. I've heard other stories of this being at 1.5 bytes per record pulled in at just a very granular level. So you could just imagine how many rows of data could be pulled into these systems. So it really, you have unlimited amounts that you could pull through. Now the other benefit of this is pivot tables a lot of times were based on single views and mashups that you had to make in the back end before you got to your pivot table in the past. And now you could actually integrate data from multiple sources into the back end of Power Pivot and mash those sources up and really do some interesting things with the analytics. And this really allows your Power Excel users to really explore their data and show your business intelligence team where they should be taking a dashboard or things of the like later. This is actually showing some of the front end of Excel services and Power Pivot built into it. On the left-hand side, you're actually seeing your slicers, which I'll actually get into in the demo in just a little bit here. And that allows you to really kind of slice through your data and show it off how you'd like. You can also see the different ways you could show off the data points. And as you can see underneath all this, this is all in an Excel format. You've got your rows and columns in here still, but you've just got different layers on top of this showing different data points. Now, at this point, I'm going to get into some of the public sector key performance indicators. And, you know, this is really what drives a lot of businesses, and businesses will use these metrics to kind of help them drive how they're doing. For instance, in the local government area, you could do a per capita daily water consumption for the citizens of that community. You've also got a percent of government taxes collected, or percent of turnout for local elections that are happening. Or lastly, in my example list is really a per capita public green space, being that a lot of areas are very concerned with being green these days. Now, police departments, and actually some of my demo is going to jump into some of these metrics. You really have, police departments have various different data sources, and a lot of these are from public records type data. Some of it is from their own internal data sources. So this Power Pivot pieces are really going to come in handy in these areas to do research on different things. Some of the metrics here is really going to be, you have a business to private crime ratio. You want to see your violent crime ratios and see how you're keeping those down. Percentage of guilty pleads before trial. You also have crimes per year per household, which is a good metric to see how you're doing overall. Then another area of the public sector would be like fire and rescue areas. And for instance, a big key area here would be an average time per response. Obviously, you want to keep that to as low of a number as possible. Number of residential fires per 1,000 people, or percentage of prank calls. Are you wasting those people's time on prank calls in the call centers? At this point, I'm going to jump into a couple different demos. I'm going to actually start off with a demo of Power Pivot and walk you through creation of a Power Pivot. And kind of, it's a little bit like a cooking show. I'm going to jump through some of these pieces and kind of fast forward through parts that are already pre-done. And I'll start off with going into the actual importing of that data to start with. Now, to start with this, you're really going to kind of go into your data screen the Power Pivot screen. And what Power Pivot has done, there's actually a new tab in here that allows you to open up a Power Pivot window. This is essentially where you're going to get all of your access to your data. And I'll go ahead and click that and open up the Power Pivot screen. Now, inside of here, you can see that I've actually already pulled in some data in this case. And what you have is essentially you have different ways to pull in data. You can pull it from databases such as SQL Server, from Access, which I know there's a lot of disparate data sources in Access that people are trying to aggregate. You also have from Analysis Services or Power Pivot. Analysis Services is obviously your SQL Server Analysis Services backend. Power Pivot acts a lot like Analysis Services, especially once it's loaded up into your Power Pivot gallery. So in this case, I would actually probably have selected the import from an Excel file to get this data in here, and I could browse for that Excel file, test my connection, and literally go through these steps. In this case, I've already imported a lot of my data in, and this is really just test or example data that I created to kind of get the point across of how a police department would kind of use some of these types of records. As you can see, you've got offense type, offenses, violent offenses, and they're all kind of in different formats and ways that they use this data. At the far right, I've actually got a few things over here that are actually calculated measures that I've added into this table. In this case, you actually have your offense month, which I've aggregated out just the month itself so I could use that to filter on later. I've actually got also an offense quarter, and as you can see, here's the function that I'm using to gather this information. You also have offense year, which is just a standard year calculation. And, you know, for those of you that are familiar with Excel, you'll see that this is very similar to creating Excel functions. In this last one, I'm actually going to go ahead and create a function for day of the week. So go ahead and type in format. And as you can see, it pops up as I'm doing that. And I could just hit the tab button and it'll fill it in for me. And then in this case, I'm going to call this same table because I've got the date right in this table. And I could go ahead and come down here and look at conviction date. Oops, sorry, it's supposed to be offense date. And then lastly, I'm going to add in this to be days of the week, and then I'll close out my format. And I'll go ahead and hit that, and as you can see, I'm already adding in these columns, which I've got close to 1,300 records in here, and I did it fairly quickly. Like I said, it really, there's amounts of data you could really put into this system now. Now, I'm going to actually go in and rename this column to offense day of the week. And then that way that'll pull back to the front end for me. So I'm going to actually go back into the front end at this point now that I've built these pieces out. And what I'll actually end up doing is dropping in a pivot table based on the Power Pivot backend. So what I'll do is, in this case, I'm going to actually add in 4 charts. And I could just go ahead and say add it in the existing worksheet. Now, that went in and added all those in. And, you know, if you want to clean this up a little bit, you could actually just go ahead and remove some of the columns. You could have selected A1, and I just didn't select that on that one. But this is basically your different charts that you're working with. In this case, I'm gonna start off with a simple breakdown of types of offenses within a ZIP+4 area. So what I'll start with is actually in the access field over here. And if you've used other pivot tables, you'll notice that a lot of this stuff is very familiar to you in these 4 bottom columns. The slicers vertical and slicers horizontal are slightly different. Those are actually a way that you can add slicers either to the top or the left side of this report. And those could be moved around as well. In this case, I'm going to actually start with zip code and go ahead and drag that into your access fields. I'm also going to add your ZIP+4 here. Now, on the legend fields, I'm going to add a fence type. So this is kind of putting together some of my look and feel here. And as you can see, you've got the different zip codes and everything put in here. Now, what I'm going to add last is actually the convictions. Because it's not really offenses that we're worried about. We're really worried about convictions, when a person's been convicted. So this is showing off some of that data. Now, as you can see, I also want to add in some slicers to be able to slice this data. So I'm going to go ahead and add in an offense year into my horizontal slicer. You'll see that it moved that whole chart area down to add this in at the top. Now I'm going to also add in quarter. And as you can see, the one that I just created is offense day of the week is in here as well. I'm going to go ahead and add all of these in to be able to slice by different time segments, essentially. So you see that they kind of automatically reorganize themselves and do certain things that way. Now I'm going to actually go ahead and modify this chart report, and just to show you some of this will actually load all of that into memory, and then it'll allow you to do different slices on the data, and you can see that that's tied in there. At any time, you can kind of just go ahead and clear out these filters. So let's go ahead and modify the chart, and I'm going to go in and just select this chart and come up to the design area, and in there I'm going to actually change some of the chart colors. You know, being that a lot of police departments use blue for their colors, I'm going to just go ahead and select that to give it a blue look and feel across the whole thing. Now I'm also going to go into my layout ribbon and change some stuff here, and basically we're going to add a label to the top. And in here I could actually go in and change the chart title. In this case I'll call it Convictions by Zip Plus 4. And then you could also go in and on the selection, on the format pane up here, I could open the selection pane as well. And as you can see in this, I can actually reorder some of the areas of where things are. I can hide different charts or things like that based on what I want to see or not see. Maybe I want to hide one of the filters, things like that. In this case, I'm going to actually skip that step and go into actually changing some other looks here where I could change the field buttons. I'm going to get rid of all of this and hide that. It actually cleans up that chart a little bit and makes it a little bit more easier for people to read and see there. So I'm going to move on to the next step here and jump into the next chart on this list. So my next step is I'm actually going to build a KPI in PowerPivot. And one thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually build that KPI on business versus private crime ratio. This is one of the things I had mentioned in those KPIs for the public sector. So I'm going to start with a victim, business versus private, get this pulled in, and put this on the axis field. You don't see anything yet because we need to add some values and different things in. In this, I'm also going to add the convictions in here, into the values area. And, you know, looking at this, I'm going to first start with adding convictions. I know there's a yes-no in here, so I don't think I want all the yeses and nos to be on here. So what I'm going to actually end up doing is going in here and filtering out the nos to start with. So let's just look at the NAs and the yeses temporarily. Something's still not right here. It looks like we got too many NAs. And I would like it to be just business and private, essentially. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to add the offense type to figure out why these NAs are coming through. So let me just drop that in here. And one of the things I'm seeing right away is that parking tickets and traffic violations don't get classified this way. So I'm probably going to want to pull those types out of this. So what I'm going to do is pull that up to the top. I also see there's a little bit of NAs in the misdemeanor area. So we might have to go to an offense itself to look at that one. So I'm going to start with the offense type and actually filter out the ones that we don't think we want in here. So I'm going to say get rid of these and just use the felony and misdemeanors. So that gets us closer to what we're looking for, but we still want to get rid of these last NAs here. And I'm going to drag those in now. And I see the one last thing that's really filtered as an NA, and that's possession, since it's more the victim is that person themselves. So I'm going to actually push this up to the top here, and we're going to filter out those as well, because we're looking for more of a clear picture of what private versus business ratio is here. So here's possession. I'm just going to get rid of that one, and now we're down to just the business and private. So this is kind of what I was going for. Now, one of the last steps in here, I'm going to actually swap this out to show it as a pie chart, because I think that's going to show this off a little bit better. You can either change the chart type here, and you can also go up in the design tab that I showed you earlier. I'm going to switch it right here and just go to the pie chart. And as you can see, it swapped that out for me. And now, one other thing that I'm still not seeing the titles probably how I want them to be shown. So I could actually change some stuff up here and kind of go to a percentage basis. I could also clear out that format again and get rid of the extra buttons. and, you know, we could go back to a view that's similar to the other blue look and feel. So this is kind of how you walk through creating that other KPI in here. And as you can see, when I select different things at the top here, it is actually swapping out the different pieces here. I could get rid of that and go to the 2010 only, so on and so forth. So, you know, that's a little bit cleaned up version of that. And I'm going to just go ahead and jump on to the next set of charts that we're going to work with. And this has kind of got all the other formatting done with it. As you can see, it's down here. And now I'm going to jump up to chart 3. Chart 3 is actually working on some limiting violent offenses. And then another area that there would be in here is I could go to chart 4 as well, but, you know, due to the time that I have going here, I'm going to actually skip some of these and jump right ahead to the final version to show you some of the stuff that we did in this whole exercise. I'm going to jump straight to version 5 here, and I'm going to hide this bar at the top so you can see most of the screen. We've actually added in convictions versus violent offenses, and I was actually able to separate the axis here, where you've got the conviction count on the left axis, the violent offense count on the right axis. At the bottom here, we had fines by offense type. Now, one thing that I also added in here was the total fines versus the fines paid overall, because I think that's a big key metric there of what people are doing with that. Now, as you can see, some of these items can all be filtered based on day of the week, or I could just select a certain month, and that'll filter out things. You could also select multiple months by holding down the control key and clicking on that extra month. So you can see how this all is interactive and works together. So next step here is I'm going to actually go ahead and jump into another demo we have. And this is going to show you how some of this interacts with the SharePoint system. Give me just a second to get logged in here. I'm going to go ahead and open another one because I'm going to show another page here as well. So inside of here is actually where you have some of your Power Pivot functionality built in, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Power Pivot, and then after that I'm actually going to take you to a Power Pivot gallery where you'd actually load these items up. And in the new DM Power Pivot gallery, that's our new DM site inside of here, you will see that we have a Power Pivot gallery built right in here. As you can see, it'll load it up with Silverlight controls. Now, one of the unique things about the integration of that Power Pivot piece that I first created in this backend is when you load a new file up into this Power Pivot gallery, it's actually going to create a SQL Server Analysis Services queue out of the Power Pivot you created. So a lot of this data would actually be driven straight from that. You know, since this one's already loaded up, I'm going to just use this one as an example. It's actually pulling from SQL Azure to pull into Power Pivot. Now, in this case, you've got multiple slides inside of here, but they've allowed only the first slide to be viewed by the person online. I could open in an Excel and actually go in and edit all of this if I'd like. But as you can see, you've got different pieces built right in here, and I could select different people. The first click is actually loading that SQL Server Analysis Services queue into memory. So that's why that first version might take a little bit longer than the last, than the next step after that. And as you can see, you can slice this in many different ways. Now, one of the other beauties of this is as you get new data underlying these systems, you can actually just go ahead and refresh all your connections right here. and it'll pull all that data back into that Power Pivot backend for you. Now, I don't have enough time to go into detail on the management of this, but there is also a whole IT management portal. It's called the Power Pivot Management Portal, or Management Dashboard. And that'll actually allow you to visualize how all of the pieces are being used inside of this Power Pivot gallery. And it really kind of helps IT decide what are the things that need to become productionalized in the sense of adding it into your data model of your true enterprise data warehouse. Now, moving on to kind of a performance point piece of this, I've got another demo. It's not really around public sector. It's more around a retail company opening multiple chains of retail stores. This is just another demo that I felt really shows off the usage of PerformancePoint and SharePoint together, and also even integrating in SQL Server reporting services, and even things like on the team performance page, you've got a version of Excel services showing off, the site analytics page. Sorry about that. The site analytics page actually has Excel services built right in where you're showing off your Power Pivot right inside the screen here. And as you can see, you could kind of go in and use this data just like you would with any other Power Pivot you've created and used in the Power Pivot gallery. And you can see that there's the features of KPIs you could build right into your charts here, and you've also got trend lines that could be built in as well. But we've already covered a lot of the Excel services pieces. I'm going to jump back into, there's actually data entry pieces to this and workflows that are guiding this system. But I'm going to jump right into the analytics section, which is really the deal maker section here. So in this page, essentially, you've got a mashup of not only your SQL Server SSRS pages that are coming up, and as this loads, you'll see that there's the SQL Server map in the center of all of this. You also have a custom master page built into this. On the left-hand side, you're going to see that we have an integration right into the ADS and the AD and essentially also your Office communication server. So in this screen, you've actually got a lot of this is your custom master page that's built into this. Now, in this case, I'm logged in as Tim Allison, or I'm viewing Tim Allison's details. I'm logged in as a decision maker, which is actually, they have multiple deal makers working for them. These are the deal makers that work for me as that decision maker. For instance, this is Tim Allison's view. I'm going to go ahead and select Catherine Bullock's view. As you'll see, this will actually change all the different components in this screen to reflect Catherine's specific details. I could mouse over these different pinpoints on the maps, and in the code behind all of this, you essentially say what details you would like to pull up in this map. For instance, in this case, I could look at the store details, the city, the state, the cost, the initial investment, and occupancy expense. Now, if I click on one of these, I could actually have it drill into the map itself, but in this case, we decided to actually show a picture of the store that we're looking at, figuring it works better with the flow of what I'm trying to do here. And, I've got some details about that store on the right-hand side here. Now, going a little bit further, I know that I've got data entry people gathering data for me. And, what I see over here on the deal status board, that I've got a number of different stores that are in process. They're collecting data on those, and those are properties I've selected. But as I can see, there's actually two stores here, 6187, 7329 are at 100% complete for the collection of that data. Now, that tells me that it's probably a time to either submit this to my boss, to the boss, the decision maker, if I'm the deal maker. And in this case, being that I'm the decision maker, I see that they've got a couple ready for me. I'm going to just follow along this lease analysis and look at store 6187. I can see that the sales are estimated to be $3.8 million. You've got your leasable area in meters. due to this being a worldwide kind of system. And you've got your total rent and occupancy expenses. Now, these are the key KPIs and key performance indicators that I'm really looking for here. Anything under 5%, it's actually a little touch under 5% is generally a good number. In this case, I've got 3.4% of rent as percent of sales. That's a good thing. Also, below 10% in this case is generally a good number, and it depends on some other regional metrics there. But you have occupancy expense as a percent of sales here, and those are both looking good for this store. Also looks the same for 7329. I'm looking pretty good on that one as well. But you can actually even drill in further. You can see this store is only attached to the first store up here in my list, store 0052, but I'm going to actually click on this chart and go ahead and open up my site details on this specific store because I want to drill into that store a little bit more. And the benefit of all this is it's all on one screen. I could really kind of manage my whole process and workflow all from this one screen. And as you can see, I've got some ROI, internal rate of return, rent percentage sales, so on and so forth. I'm also going to dig into one other area here, and I've got risk analysis also built into this. I could go into my risk analysis, and I could see that store 6187 is actually looking green across the board as well. That's your sales investment ratio of 2.24, return on investment and internal rate of return are both looking good at over 80%. So this is all looking pretty good, and I could even dig into a financial analysis as well and really drill into this data and kind of look further at the net income of that store, the net profit, so on and so forth, and look at it year over year for the metrics that they've gathered. Next up, I'm actually going to jump over to the decision maker screen. The decision maker is actually managing these deal makers. So the decision maker has a little bit more to jump through and needs to figure out some other things here. Let that go ahead and open up. Now, in this screen, I've got different ways I could drill into different items. As you can see, I've got the different performance by region here. Let's say I want to drill into this number a little bit further. I've got my Pacific region. I'm going to go to the decomposition tree. So in this is actually defined by your SQL Server Analysis Services cube and the different hierarchies that are built into that cube. In this case, I'm drilling into market immediately. I could continue this path and kind of drill in that way. Or I can actually change the way I'm looking at this and say, let me go over by site status. And I could drill into site status. I could also drill into dim date and kind of go at a year, quarter, different methods like that and really kind of break out these details. Now, one of the benefits of this decomposition tree, it will actually allow me to expand based on the path I've already defined. So once I've seen a path that I like, I could quickly analyze some of the other records that are in this tree by quickly looking at those in different ways. So that's a really powerful way to drill into your different data elements. And if you have that SQL Server Analysis Services cube in the back end, you could really drill in all you'd like on this. Now, I could actually drill in different methods here and go to Pacific here as well. And as you can see, that's actually filtering out the components based on me selecting that filter. This top one is really doing it by region, so we didn't want that one to filter out by region because we're already filtering by region. Now, I could actually drill into this as well and go to Pacific and just look at Pacific Oregon versus Pacific California, in different ways like that. If you got more regions underneath there, you can actually continue to drill in that same fashion as far as your hierarchy will drill down to. Now, down here, you've got your performance by deal maker. And inside of this screen, I've got metrics on each of the deal makers. I can actually limit this to just one of these deal makers by selecting right here in my scorecard and see how that deal maker is done over the past few years. And really kind of helps me manage those deal makers. So, that pretty much gives you a good rundown of what the capabilities of PerformancePoint are. And I think that gives you a good example of how all of these pieces come together to form a solution. And it's generally what we've seen at most companies is you don't use just one of these items. You'll interchangeably use them to create your solution as needed. As we were saying before, some of the site analytics is built right in here. You've got team performance. You've got different things you could use here. In this site analytics, one of the reasons this was done in an Excel services method using Power Pivot was because we were actually able to create a what-if analysis in here. And if you actually go in and open this inside of Excel, you've got the ability to change some of your what-if analysis and do some assumptions built right in here. So that was a powerful tool that some of that what-if analysis couldn't be done inside of PerformancePoint without building into your cube. So as I said, that's really kind of how you'll expand some of these solutions. Let me go ahead and switch back to my slide deck. So that kind of clears up the demo. And now I just wanted to also call out our next webcast. If you like this webcast, you're sure to like the BI in the Cloud series. What we're actually doing is working in unison with Microsoft to really showcase some of their new BI in the Cloud technologies that are coming out. And look forward to PDC and PASS for some announcements, and I think some interesting things will be coming out soon to the public. Now at this point, I'm going to actually hand it back over to Bill Fevitz to do a little bit of closing remarks, and then we'll probably open it up for questions at the end as well.
Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate your time in presenting this to our public sector customers. And I'd like to thank all the attendees for your time this morning. You've seen a lot of capability that can be drawn together to put together a solution. One of the things we're seeing in public sector, of course, is the need for transparency and exposing data, proper data to the public. The expectations of the public is going up. There's a kind of a move to a government 2.0, the expectations of the public to see more data, the right kind of data in real time is there. So the tools are there from Microsoft to be able to build those kinds of solutions in your organizations. And Neudesic is ready to help you do that. I'd like to invite any of you to contact either myself, my email is there, or just contact Neudesic. If you'd like more information, like to sit down, or do a further demo of the capabilities here to see how it fits in your organization.
Thanks, Bill, and thank you, Tom. We're now going to jump into Q&A, and we did have a few questions come through. Just as a reminder, to ask a question, please click on the Q&A verbiage located in the toolbar on the top left side of your screen. Type your question, then click the Ask button. We had a question come through. When would you use PerformancePoint Services to view dashboards and reports versus reporting analysis services? I'm unclear on the lines between all these different tools available. They seem to have overlapping functionality. Any best practices?
I think it really comes down to the solution you're looking for and whether you have a well-defined SQL Server Analysis Services cube underneath some of this. PerformancePoint, generally we see it as more of a canned version of self-service. And I like to explain it in kind of different levels of self-service that you allow people to have. That's a very direct path of how you're going to drill into your data, how you're going to analyze your data, and what you're going to do with it. Generally, those PerformancePoint dashboards are really built around a storyline of what a customer or user is going to try to achieve on this dashboard. Now, reporting services, Report Builder 3.0, I think is another level of this. And a lot of, not to be confused with the two pieces, you could surface almost any SQL Server reporting services, reports and charts and different things inside of PerformancePoint. The one difference between those is you don't get a lot of the drill down capability built into the tool. You actually have to program it in SQL Server reporting services. Now, with SQL Server reporting services, Report Builder 3.0, that's another level of self-service. that allows people to drill into their data and create their own types of reports that are based on what they want. A lot of times the dashboard is a little too restrictive for some people, and they want to open it up a little further. Now, the last version of that, the furthest level of really self-service, is really Power Pivot. I think that's where you're really opening that door to people to analyze data in any way they'd like. And a lot of times how we've seen it used is people will start with a baseline of their SQL Server Analysis Services queue, but then they'll add other data, such as public records data from, some public record search, such as InfoSource. In fact, we've actually seen a whole new, there's called the codename Dallas, is actually a project that we've seen released by Microsoft that actually has public record type data being fed into Power Pivot data feeds. So that's, like I said, you're really getting to that true analytics of anything you want to do and anything goes. But a lot of times we'll see that the Power Pivot pieces kind of feed back into the dashboarding later, because we'll see something that a Power user will create that really tells a business intelligence developer on the SQL Server Analysis Services end to kind of really work with what they didn't know before, and the business user is showing them something that they need to add into their system. Hopefully that answers your question, but it is a kind of a solution basis that you'll have to kind of work through some of those issues.
Thanks, Tom. That sounds very helpful. Another question we had was, what interfaces are these SharePoint dashboards you are using built with?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Meredith?
Yes. What interfaces are these SharePoint dashboards you are showing built with?
They're all built in Dashboard Designer. Now, there's a combination of that, and then there's also a custom master page underneath all of that. So it's kind of a combination of the two, and you'll use those two tools interchangeably as you're developing it.
Thank you. Another question was, do you find Microsoft BI in line with leading tools such as Business Objects, Cognos, and OB? Give documentation on how Microsoft BI compares with others.
Yeah, and I've used quite a few other tools. I do feel they are in line with those tools, and one of the things that I feel that Microsoft has really done is opened up some of those self-service capabilities, and that in-memory analytics that I think is a whole new area of that they're tackling that I feel is really kind of pushing us to the limit on the Microsoft side.
Thank you. Another question was, do you have any training or demos for published access application on SharePoint 2010?
I personally don't, but in Neudesic as a whole, we have a number of different webcasts we do on a regular basis. And if you'd like, we could definitely get you added on to our webcast list where our SharePoint practice generally, our collaboration, portals and collaborations practice will generally kind of follow in those footsteps more.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, that'd be a great webcast to follow up with. Another question is, can you write back to the data source from Excel services?
Yes, you can. Not to the Power Pivot backend, but for basic data entry, yes, you can on the front end of that.
Thanks, Tom. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to type them in at this time. Oh, we did have one more. Where do you segregate the data layers such that the data is stored in the cloud? Are these BI tools pluggable into the cloud like Azure?
Yeah, as you saw in the one demo I did, that Power Pivot was actually pulling data from the cloud using an Azure source table. So yes, you could very well, use Power Pivots to create some of this. Now, also inside of SharePoint Online, which is a cloud-based version of SharePoint, there is Excel services inside of there, and there's options for that for sure.
Thanks, Tom. We're now going to go to a couple of polling questions, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. First question, was this content helpful for your business? Yes or no? couple of more seconds. Great, thank you. The second question, please rate the presentation content, excellent, good, or poor. Give it a few more seconds. Great, thank you. The next question, would you like us to send you more information about the upcoming BI in the Cloud webcast? Yes or no? Give it a few more seconds. Thank you. Last polling question, would you like us to schedule a follow-up? Yes or no? More seconds. All right, thank you. If there are no further questions, we'd like to thank Tom again for the wonderful presentation. Again, we will be forwarding out the recorded version of this presentation when it becomes available. If you have any further questions about this presentation, please feel free to email Tom or Bill Setters at the email addresses provided below on the slide. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webcast. You are now free to disconnect. Thank you.